everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice Talk. Today's topic is human-centered approach in digital transformation. I have a distinguished guest with me today. Please welcome Jen Felch, Chief Digital Officer and CIO at Dell Technologies. Hi, Jen. Welcome to CXO Spice Talk. Delighted to host you today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Helen. It's great to be here.
Yeah, could you share with the audience what your responsibilities are as a Chief Digital Officer and CIO at Dell Technologies?
You bet. So my responsibilities include operating all of our IT systems, including that's infrastructure, software, the daily operations, or all of the systems that support the daily operations of the company. And that includes doing new development as how we're transforming them. It also includes Dell.com and our online experience for customers. And so, sometimes people ask like CIO, CDO, what's the difference? And we just put the titles together to say, if you think of we want people to think like not only the traditional role of the CIO of keeping things running, but also to bring that technology perspective to all of the business partners across the company about digital transformation. So I think I have a pretty awesome job being the CDO and CIO for Dell.
Absolutely. So thank you for explaining that. Before we
Sure.
dive into deep, let's talk about Tim the Beaver. I understand he's a scout for MIT and was chosen because of his remarkable engineer and mechanical skill and habit of industry. Wow, I never knew actually beavers were so tech-minded. So here's the question. What inspired you to get into mechanical engineer at MIT and really go on to become alumnus of the Leaders for Global Operations program at MIT, plus earned your MBA and MS in computer science from there? Could you share your favorite story about Tim the Beaver with us?
Okay, well, there's a lot in there. I guess first I'd say, the decision to study mechanical engineering probably stemmed from a love of building things, like creating products, creating solutions. And, mechanical engineering is a pretty broad discipline. And somewhere during that journey, and in fact, I found it not too long ago, I wrote a proposal to add computer science as kind of a minor because I wanted to focus on the automation of the engineering processes and in particular design, which I think was kind of insightful early. I mean, now it's insightful because it's a little bit of what I do every day. So I appreciate that MIT gave me that flexibility, and I love learning. So they gave me a lot of opportunity, as you outlined, to go on and learn even more about not just mechanical engineering, but operations and business. And, I think it's a really fabulous program that brings together engineering talent and a business focus to say, like, how do you really transform companies and how do you bring that to light? So I am a big fan. I'm a big fan of my alma mater. And then I don't know about my favorite story of Tim the Beaver. I will say that, people often ask about why a beaver, and I usually say because it's nature's engineer building things, unlike a lot of other animals. And maybe we'll get a list now of all the animals that actually build things. But Tim the Beaver represents nature's engineer. And I don't know. I mean, I think one of the funniest things is that he's a really big beaver. I mean, like it's like it's like 6.5 feet tall. So anyway, my favorite story is that at one point I did have the honor of wearing that costume just one time. It was really awesome. I'm not 6 feet tall. You can't tell that on the video, but it worked. It worked. So.
Oh, I can't wait to see a picture of you in that Tim the Beaver outfit someday.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there are any pictures available, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, Dell Technologies is exploring a topic a lot of people are thinking about, but few are talking about. This, of course, is burnout, right? The really boundaries of work, how HR and IT need to better collaborate, and the consequences of knowing we can work anywhere, anytime. And Dell Technologies' breakthrough study is fascinating. I was actually honored to participate that breakthrough study. So tell us how this idea for the study came about.
You know, I'm really appreciative of the study myself because every other year we pick a research topic and it's typically about digital transformation, and we talk about like what are the big barriers, how do you identify really kind of leading organizations, and then when we looked at the beginning of the pandemic, you saw like some major trends, data overload. Lot of people related aspects because it was such a dramatic change for us, whether it was skills or digital culture or leadership or vision. And when so we said it's really a good topic to explore and try to understand a little bit more. And it looks at what are the barriers for really working in this kind of environment. And the study is like 10,000 people responded in 40 different locations, all levels of business organizations. And we learned most organizations are pretty resilient digitally, but people are also exhausted. And even as the pandemic changes state and people have a lot more freedom than we did at one point, there's still that exhaustion. The technology is complex. The pace of change really hasn't slowed down, even if we started moving locations. And I think I speak for a lot of leaders, like we really want to do meaningful work. We want our teams to be able to do meaningful work, but we don't want people in a constant state of being overwhelmed. So, we said we really got to put people back at the center of our work, front and center, and then look at what does it take to make them successful? What does it take to make them successful from wherever they choose to be? And so that's the breakthrough study.
Yeah, it's fascinating. 10,500 people participated. I know. 40 plus locations, amazing, right? So what was the most surprising revelation from the breakthrough study?
Um, why don't we split it up a little bit? Like some things were really like optimistic. I think it's 85% of business leaders regard their people as their greatest asset. Yay, right? Like that's awesome. So 85%. And 71% believe that there's always a technology answer to a problem waiting to be uncovered. So, those I really like those. But on the negative side, amongst I guess 10,500, the exact number, 41% are still wrestling with burnout and poor mental health. 58% of all respondents are not yet experiencing better work-life balance, despite working remotely for the last 2 years. So I think we all have to be really cautious about, not just reverting back to the old way of working. I don't even think that's possible, but to step back and say, well, what have we learned over the past 2 years? What are our values and principles and processes, and how do we preserve the good part of the learning and what we can do differently?
That's profound, Jen. So what is the difference, right, about digital transformation now than say 5 years ago?
Um, you know, one, 5 years ago, I think people kind of felt like, okay, digital transformation, that's really like an IT project. It's a really big word, and then, or set of word, 2 words, that, IT people are talking about to get funding, and IT was trying to lead this work about what could happen. And today, because I think people realized if I am removed from others physically, other people, other organizations, and my primary means of communicating is going to be digitally through my computer, right? Then now everybody realized, like, okay, it is really possible, and it's a people transformation and a technology transformation. So, one of the positives out of the pandemic is that business leaders could see there really is a different way of working. There's a different way of engaging with customers, and it's pretty good, actually. Like, it's actually great. So I think the pace of change has accelerated over the last several years. So if you think 5 years ago, I can just speak for Dell Technologies. Our pace of change is, it has increased incredibly. And so have the complexities, because we have data coming in from lots of places. We have lots of changing regulation. We do business in over 150 countries. So trying to make really streamlined experiences for people, making sure that we're compliant, dealing with making sure we're addressing security and privacy. There's lots of complexity, but I think the future is like super bright. And when we think about just putting people at the center, then those optimists in the survey that said they felt like that there was a technology solution for all the problems out there, I'm with them. I totally believe that. We just have to remember that there's people involved in all of those things as well. And so we need to, as technology leaders, we need to stay current. We need to be flexible. We kind of need to be ready for anything, but we also need to make sure that we're really having those open dialogues about what problem we're trying to solve, and that we keep that, keep humans we keep people at the center, whether those are people using our applications or people writing the software.
I love what you just said, Jen. You mentioned about we first need to understand what problem we're trying to solve and put people in the center of that. And then things will come into place, right? Transformation will happen at that point. So apparently the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation and remote work. So what is your view on this acceleration?
Personally, I love it. I mean, I do. I love it. I think for many, it redefined expectations of what's possible. I mean, I work at a technology company, and we had people that said, I never work remote. I always come to the office. Mm-hmm. And then they worked remote because they had to, and realized, like, wow, it's actually really good, right? Like we did it for very different reasons, but I think people could see, like, whether it's flexibility, we also have really big global teams, mm-hmm. and we all could turn on our video and see each other, which honestly we just weren't doing before. So I think we all have an opportunity to maybe just step back and listen to all of our employees about what they were doing before, what they've done over the last few years, and what they're looking for. I mean, what we're hearing is people really appreciate the flexibility to work from anywhere, the flexibility, traveling if you need to, but you can still do your job effectively. Sometimes that means that people need to restructure the work that they're doing. So it's clear that, and this I think came out really loudly during the pandemic, is people can work independent as long as they have the context and they know what's expected of them. Then they can do that work kind of on their own schedule, not just be in the office and it looks like you're working because you're physically there, right? So it works well for companies that are well organized, but it puts that focus on saying work is an outcome. Okay, and you need to define that. Before the pandemic, we had about 65% at Dell. About 65% of our team members, they worked in a flexible way, either remotely full time or 1 or 2 days off campus. And that was left to them to decide. And they said it's really important for productivity. It's important for collaboration. and for well-being. And, I think it also gives people the opportunity to kind of gave people the opportunity to get away from the office, kind of have that focus time, right? Probably are a little bit of the reverse, that we have a lot of focus time and we want to engage with people. We want to have that socialization, that rapid fire collaboration, and just trying to find that balance, find that pattern that works for the kind of team and objectives that they're trying to achieve.
That really carries a lot of weight when it comes from you, right? Who manage a 10,000 people org. That's really, we learn from the study, right? How you break through with connectivity, how you break through with productivity. And, I'm a fan of Dr. Brene Brown, and she actually once wrote that empathy is communicating that incredibly healing message of you are not alone. Right? How do you feel companies can practice empathy while integrating more and more technology?
It is such a good point, because, I said in the past, it's just that people actually make things happen at companies. And, going through a digital transformation can be emotionally challenging, because you're changing things for people, right? You're changing things. And so you have to kind of have that ear to listen for not only what people say, but what they might be feeling. So I think it's really, really important. So, I think you mentioned, as we think about designing solutions, we do try to take an approach where we really, sit down and understand sometimes not just what people asked for, but what they're doing every day, so that you can try to get different perspectives. If you can observe their work, which can be even easier now that we're all connected from wherever we are. And that is building an understanding of what someone else is experiencing and saying, hey, you're not alone. I understand, I can see the problem that you're facing. Let's look at some solutions together, or let's prototype something. That goes beyond, like, I just heard you, to saying, I not only heard you, but I want to help solve the problem. And what we saw in the survey, by the way, is like 83% of the people that responded said their leaders overlook different perspectives and viewpoints. This kind of is terrible.
Yeah.
And like almost 67% believe that their organization underestimates the people requirements when planning transformation programs. And for both those, leaders are the key to success. Leaders who can, listen for what are the different perspectives of not maybe the definition of the problem, but also the selected solution. And how do you get a perspective of what people actually need to actually change you're going to change their process, you're going to change their tools, you're going to change the way they work. And that introduces uncertainty into an environment. You kind of have to have an ear for that and figure out, like, what does it mean for that person? And we kind of dance around it a little bit, but sometimes that might be the person's worried about their livelihood. Well, we as leaders have to be aware of that and maybe look for alternatives, right? But to perhaps do that a little more proactively. So here's, I would say people need to be more engaged and thinking about how their words and their actions are going to impact others. And, if you said, like, what's a really important skill in digital transformation? One of them is listening, like listening with your whole self to really hear what people are saying. And so I think we had, like, in the decision makers, a little over half, 54% of them said they just kind of assume that employees understand why it's important to adopt new technology and modernize. They just assume it. Sometimes, we kind of shouldn't really make assumptions. We might need to really articulate why this is important and what it means for them. And so I think that is, that's the essence of really good change management, and having empathy for the changes that people will go through are really essential, I think, in any digital transformation, actually any transformation. And I wouldn't be very authentic if I told you I hadn't overlooked them myself. Because sometimes I think, of course, it seems obvious. It might seem obvious to me, but it's not obvious to everyone, because we come from our own perspective. So part of that empathetic leadership is to, put yourself in the shoes of the receiving person and see, like, does it really make sense? What are their objectives? What are they thinking about? What are they worried about? Ask them.
You're right, Jen. Listening is such an important skill for a leader, right? We all understand or agree the importance of listening. However, when it comes to the day-to-day practice, sometimes we're not necessarily in the day-to-day struggle as our employees are. And then so it does require um, us to dig in, and then not only just to listen, but also understand why there's a struggle, and then further along to take actions, right? This really gets to the next question here. It's one thing to say that HR and IT should work together, because if the IT leader uncovers things in the field, and then if that feedback is not shared with the HR, these really are two separate functions, right? There could be disconnect. So what should a company do first to work toward a collaborative HR and IT partnership?
The last few years should have taught us that we need to put humanity first, and really kind of leading with empathy and having that mindset. And I think it's that intersection of people and technology. And sometimes, having that relationship, not only at a senior level, but throughout the organization, to be able to say that maybe the technology leader observes something, being able to share that with the HR leader, right? Maybe the HR leader is realizing like the processes are really kind of, maybe the processes are broken. When an employee joins a company, they join a company to deliver some specific outcome, to be part probably of the product or the service or the solution that they're bringing to market. Both HR and IT support that employee. We want to give them great technology to work from anywhere. We want to give them an environment, the benefits, so that they can focus on, we'll call it the job at hand. And so I totally agree. Like what we do is we really try to keep a tight relationship between our HR organization and our IT organization, because it's together that we create the employee experience. Mm-hmm. And for an employee, they don't want to hear like, oh, it's HR, or oh, that's IT, or we basically have to work. We have to work hand in hand, and just like we talk about delivering solutions, that means we actually have to communicate like what we're observing, what we're seeing, and what opportunities are ahead. So I think it's a really good learning for us to say that there's a unique relationship between the HR organization and the IT organization, because of the influence that we have in attracting and retaining, key talent. So
absolutely. Well, Dell Technologies sits at 31st on the Fortune 500. And then you've also worked at Boeing, which is number 60 on the Fortune 500, but you've also worked at startup tech companies, right? Tell us what the unique challenge large enterprise and small, the mighty startups share when it comes to implementing a people-first culture.
So I'm laughing a little bit, because I think like if I was to, I would write a short book, and it would be called Everything I Need to Know About Working at a Large Company I Learned at a Small One. Mm-hmm. And here's what startups do that sometimes big companies lose track of. Mm-hmm. Number one, you're really focused on solving problems for your target audience, even before they're customers, right? You're maniacally focused on understanding their whole problem. It hasn't been solved before, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't be a company. You've seen something that warrants a solution. So you're maniacally focused on solving a problem for customers, something they're willing to pay for. Really important. Second, you hire the best people that you can. Best people, because they're going to be pretty flexible in the kind of solutions that they bring. And generally at startups, you have people who are willing to take a little risk. They want to change the game. They want to build something new, right? They want to have that excitement about bringing something to market, solving a problem that hasn't been solved before. And then maybe the big difference is small companies tend not to focus on all that administrative stuff, right? Or like, we're going to focus on delivering our product. We're going to have great people. And then someone else will take care of like all that other stuff, budgets are flexible. You don't even, you just have so much money in your burn rate, right? So that is probably the biggest difference. And at least for me, I would say you got to kind of take that same approach, focus on solving real problems that people care about, hire the best team and take care of them. And then try to minimize the bureaucracy. And startups can be really they're fun, but they're also emotional because people are really passionate about solving problems. And so I don't know, you asked me about the difference, and I think the opportunity for those of us at big companies is to capture those elements of creating a passionate and super talented team that's focused on solving problems. And if you lose track of that, then that's actually a tough place to be. That's a tough place to be. So
fantastic. Sign me up for your book. I will be the first reader for sure. I can't wait.
Well, that's the whole book. That's the whole book right there. That's the whole book. So
yeah. So what is the most important quality a chief digital officer or CIO should have to create sustainable digital transformation?
Well, that is a great question. I mean, I guess if we think about it, there's an aspect of, I think you have to have some technical expertise, because the days of just rolling out kind of other people's products are over. You have to understand the fact that there's most of us have lots of different systems, things we've built ourselves, things that we've acquired, things that we purchased, partners, etc. And being able to build out and have an architecture that leads to a strong future, I think is really important. So let's call that necessary but not sufficient, right? So you want to have those those technical capabilities, just so that you can say, like, we really got to take care of the security issues before we do something that might seem more fun and engaging. And then being able to articulate why that's important. So what is it about the business values? Like, what's the value of doing this? And I think that's important, because that's the language of business, is what's in it for us, right? Is it going to create a new business opportunity? Is it going to reduce costs? Is it a compliance thing? So I think that's also quite important. I would say, I probably could go on and on about all kinds of things. There's a big operational side of being a CIO, CDO, of like keeping things running, making sure you're investing in the redundancy and the failover options, because stuff happens, and it happens when you probably least expect it. So you just have to design for it. You have to design for things happening, design for the unexpected. And I think the two things I would say, if someone was saying, what do you look for? Look for someone who's really passionate about technology and solving problems. I think that's really important. If you don't care about it, neither will your business partners. And you got to be persistent, because sometimes it takes a little while to get the right things done. And so you don't want to give up too early. Just sort of keep steady on the path. One thing that we did, which is not actually related to equality of the CDO, but we didn't really talk about it much, is we created a process internally called the Dell Digital Way.
Mm.
And part of it came about because we had two big companies coming together and we all had our own way of doing things. So we decided we would come up with a new way. And the new way said, we're really going to focus on human-centered solutions. And we're going to bring end users into our environment to sit side by side with our development team, right? And our designers and our product managers. And I will tell you that that was an enormous change in our process, but one that has really paid dividends because people have context, so I believe that your development team, they'll change the world. They'll do incredible things, but only if they have the right context about what problem we're trying to solve. And so that the process we have is called the Dell Digital Way to bring that group of people together virtually these days so that they have a shared context of what problem they're solving, and they can do experiments, they can build out their solutions. And I guess how it relates to being a CIO or CDO and a quality is just really being passionate about not only solving the problems, but developing your own processes that you believe in that will help to drive for the right outcomes. So
that's impressive, right? And in this whole Dell Digital Way, I heard a lot about it, but I did not realize you actually imprinted that throughout the entire practice development process. So kudos. Here comes to my last question. So what is really Dell's Technologies vision for the future of work, and even more importantly, people doing the work?
Well, that is a great question, Helen. And I guess what I would say is when we look at it, there is no one size fits all. Everyone has slightly different needs. And I think that's actually part of the vision that says your employees, if the job supports it, give people the freedom and flexibility to work how, when, and where it works for them. And, we have a great history in doing that. We try to lead with, facts and data and bringing a strong people philosophy to bear. But when we look at it, about 90% of all the roles at our company have some degree of flexibility about when, where, and how they can work. So that means, for our vision, says we have to enable them to not only be highly effective from wherever they are, we also need to be thoughtful about creating those connections. So we don't have, over 100,000 people kind of all disconnected, working in isolation. We're humans. And so we like that, socialization. We like the random collisions, the water cooler talk. Those are the kinds of things that help to generate new ideas, fresh perspectives, building connections beyond, our day-to-day work, and actually building relationships and having fun. So, when we think about the vision of what work will look like, I think it's going to have a ton of flexibility that supports individual needs, whether individuals want to work, primarily on their own, or if they want to, work side by side with other people in the area. And then having opportunities maybe in between, whether it's coming together for, watch parties or whatever it might be. But the key is each one's going to be unique, and each leader, maybe it brings us back to kind of those early points. Each leader needs to be listening and having empathy for their team to say, what's going to make my team the most engaged, productive, and really, satisfied, more than satisfied, delighted with their work environment. And that might be different for every single team. So I think that we have a real opportunity to create a wonderful experience for people.
That's really profound, Jen. And thank you for sharing your vision and wisdom with us today. And I wish I could stay here for another hour with you. But I learned so much just from our conversation today, right? We really learned that sustainable breakthrough transformation happens at the intersection of people and technology. And leading organizations take a human-centered approach, right? They really guide their people through changes as they embark digital transformation. You mentioned about empathetic leadership and technology, and being persistent or good listener are some key success characteristics. And the success stories that you shared about breakthrough with connectivity, breakthrough with productivity, and breakthrough with empathy all play a key role in enabling business to build digital resilience. So thank you for joining us today, everyone, and stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.